Street in Kelowna. Before we go any further, I just wanted to let everyone know that we are recording this meeting so that it can be available for viewing for anyone who's not able to attend today, so that everyone has the same information or access to the same information. My name's Lisa Helps. I'm the executive lead for BC Builds, and we're here today to share information about the process that we're in, about BC Builds, and about the opportunity at 1428 St. Paul Street in Kelowna. Most importantly, though, we're here to answer your questions. So I'm going to run through a short overview of the process, and then I'm going to hand it to my colleague Ben from the City of Kelowna, who will walk you through the opportunity. It's all laid out in the property opportunity notice, but there may be some things that he wishes to highlight. And then after that, the remainder of the time is to answer all the questions that you have so that you can put proposals in for this site. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen and taking you to the Housing Development Opportunities page, which you've already been to because you found your way here. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of the page. So this is here for all of you to see as well. And just let you know how this process works and where we are in it. So we're here. There are zoned land posted on the BC Build site. We are seeking proposals alongside the City of Kelowna for development on this site. City of Kelowna has given until the end of July, and I'll look back to the specific date when we close out the session, to bring proposals forward. So once we get those proposals in, a joint evaluation committee made up of the City of Kelowna and BC Builds will evaluate the proposals. Once we've selected a successful proponent, each party will sign a conditional land contribution letter. So this will be signed between BC Builds, the City of Kelowna, and the successful proponent, and it will outline our collective responsibilities to get the project from the time the letter is signed to construction start in 12 to 18 months. And that's a key criteria for BC Builds. The program is designed to build more homes for middle-income British Columbians quickly. Just a little bit more information about the kinds of responsibilities for each party in this conditional land contribution letter. BC Builds is responsible for providing funding and financing, so we'll work through those approvals processes with you. The proponent is responsible for submitting development permit, building permit, any other permits or agreements required by the City of Kelowna. And of course, the City of Kelowna is responsible for evaluating the development permit, building permit. And then on this site, it is a long-term lease that is being looked for from the city, between the city and the successful proponent, a 60-year lease. So we'd all work together on a lease agreement as well. So that's what the process looks like from here on in. I now just want to highlight the evaluation criteria. And again, this is all laid out in the property opportunity notice for this site. But I just want to draw people's attention to what we're going to be scoring so that you can consider that when you're putting together your proposals. So first of all, the mandatory requirements that need to be met for your proposal to be evaluated is you need to be an eligible applicant, you need to meet the target household incomes, you need to have demonstrated property management experience, and you need to have demonstrated development experience. Each of these 4 requirements are spelled out really clearly further up in the property opportunity notice. And I'm not going to read through that in detail, but please read through it yourselves. If we answer yes to all of these questions, and this is a yes/no evaluation, then we will wait and evaluate the proposals. So the first one, which receives 20 points out of 100 or 20% of the score, is for financial viability and sustainability. And what this means simply is that the project has to be financially sustainable without any ongoing operating subsidy. BC Builds, it's a market rental supply program. It's not an affordable program. There's no ongoing operating subsidy. So we're looking for pro formas that can demonstrate that the carrying costs of the building can be satisfied by the rents that are being charged. Second key point, and this one I'm going to spend a little bit of time on just so everyone understands how it works. And if there are more questions that come up later, we can dive in more deeply to them. So this is for the amount of per unit subsidy required. Kelowna has left its doors wide open. They're open to receiving proposals from the private sector to own and operate the building as a private entity, or from the nonprofit sector to come forward and own and operate the building as a nonprofit. The per unit subsidy, the per unit grant, is only eligible, or only the nonprofit operators are eligible for the per unit grant. So just note that for private developers, you're expected to bring some of your own equity because you're essentially getting land at nominal value. The per unit subsidy is calculated based on 20% of units being at 20% below market. So for everyone, for nonprofits and co-ops that may be putting forward proposals, your expectation is that 20% of units will be at 20% below market, and the grant amount provided is to get 20% of those units to 20% below market. So the maximum grant amount is $225,000. That's anything above that is ineligible as a BC Builds project, but the scoring here is the lower the per unit subsidy required, the better the score, and so that's how we expect that work to be done. The per unit grant amount, however, when you're building your pro formas, is applied to every unit in the building, not just the 20% of units at 20% below market. And I can dive into that in a bit more detail if there are questions about it. The second or third rather scoring criteria that I want to draw your attention to that's also weighted at 15% is the percentage of units at 20% below market. So for the nonprofit and co-op sector, it's a requirement that you must meet 20% of units at 20% below market, and that's what the grant amount is meant to help assist with. For the private sector, because there's no grant, you are not required to meet 20% of units at 20% below market. However, you can see the scoring is weighted in that direction, and so that evaluation criteria is there for your consideration. The other kind of financial related one are target household incomes. So again, as you can see in the mandatory requirements, please read the BC Builds program framework. Please look at the renters page of the website. That tells you who we are aiming these homes for. So you have to meet the target household incomes to start, to get into the process. What we're evaluating here is how low in the range you are able to deliver housing for. And when you look at the target household incomes, you'll see what I mean by range. And then finally, the fifth criteria that has some significant weighting at 15% is speed to market. So we want to get these homes built quickly, and we'll be looking for proposals that can demonstrate and innovate in terms of how quickly they can get not only to construction, but also to have people living in these homes, since that's ultimately the objective of the program. So we're here to answer your questions on all of this. I went through that relatively quickly, but I wanted to just draw attention to the things that are getting heavier scores, and then we can talk about anything else you'd like. Before I do that, though, I want to hand it over to Ben from Kelowna. And Ben, if you just want to give a high level, you can share screen or not, accentuate what you've already shared in the property opportunity notice. Basically, this is your sales pitch opportunity to share what you need to with the group so that they bring proposals to your municipality.
Thanks, Lisa. Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to attend today's conversation on the opportunity at the city, or for the Kelowna parcels at 1428 St. Paul. I'm just going to share my screen just to give everybody some context with the location, and then I'll just kind of do an overview of kind of what our expectations are, and talk about some of the opportunities and constraints. Just give me 2 seconds here. All right, so I've highlighted the property. It is downtown Kelowna. Let's see, where'd that go? Sorry. Escape that. Sorry, 1 second here. Okay, subject properties are located here. We've actually just moved forward with the consolidation of the lands. It's roughly 0.3 acres in size. But for context, it is right downtown. City of Kelowna is adjacent, about 200 or so meters, 300 or so meters from the waterfront, and right in the heart of our urban center. So some high-level overview of the site, as I said, is 0.3 acres in size, approximately 28 by 45, 28 meters street frontage. Is zoned urban center. Our expected land use of this is obviously rental below market for the minimum 20% as that threshold. There is a component to do retail at grade as defined in the OCP. Because it is St. Paul in our OCP is identified as a retail street. Density-wise, it is, as I said, 0.3 acres, but there is, in the OCP, it does identify 26-story and a 7.2 FAR plus bonusing. Obviously, the site size will limit that. So based on some preliminary analysis, our desire is around a 6-story build, fitting the context of the local neighborhood. That being said, we're not limited to that. So if there's an innovative way, be it through mass timber or some other measure that the height or the site can leverage some additional height, we're open to that conversation, because obviously we want to see a number of units, but at the end of the day, it has to work from the development standpoint and be feasible. So with the 6-story, you're looking at like a 1.8 FAR plus necessary bonusing. On the parking side of things, through the provincial changes, the City of Kelowna downtown was not identified as one of the transit hubs that would require zero parking. But council has given indication that there's strong appetite to reduce parking variances on the site. And then our understanding, the likelihood is that when the province looks at an evaluation of the kind of the second go of transit hubs, our expectation that the City of Kelowna will likely be with the zero parking requirements. So obviously that'll just factor into whatever the proponents feel is the most responsible or likely response on parking needs for the site. On the parking side, what else is there? Sorry, all access will be required off the lane of the site. There'll be no forthcoming access off the St. Paul, which is in line with the urban center. With regards to maybe some pieces that might not be, I guess, to everybody's information, is the incentives that the City of Kelowna offers on rental-focused developments. So the City of Kelowna has a rental tax exemption that is for 10 years, and that covers the property tax for the rental property or the rental lands, as well as the province waives the school taxes, and that's both for a period of 10 years. In order for the property to achieve that, has to be zoned for the rental purpose. So we are actually moving. The land is zoned urban center, but we are actively moving through to have the land zoned or UC with the rental use associated with that, so that the developer can then leverage the rental tax exemption. That'll be in place shortly, so it's not really any risk to the project. Previously, we had been in conversation with our development engineering team to provide us with the surface memo. That information has actually been uploaded to the site information as of the other day, along with the updated survey information as well as the preliminary geotech. So I would advise everybody to have a look through the information there and to see if there's any questions. But as far as the development engineering, the site is not serviced. There is potential in that, the city working in partnership with the developer on some servicing costs, because we were one of the successful municipalities on the Housing Accelerator Fund. So that may be some additional equity that we may be able to contribute. But I don't think anybody should make that assumption. It can be a conversation after the fact. And as far as like street improvements, it is an urbanized area. There is expectation that frontage does get fully urbanized, so there is the removal of the driveway access, so that'll have to be urbanized. But within the development memo, I didn't really see anything too burdensome. I think there is some conversation around traffic impact, and understanding I think the Doyle and St. Paul, but I think that's going to likely factor more so with obviously the construction with UBC, more so than the development. Outside of that, there are two Fortis transformers, one in the northwest and one in the southwest corner, that will have to be protected, and they are protected via statute right away. So high level overview, I think that's the information I really wanted to provide. I guess I'll emphasize we're open to seeing different innovative solutions to leverage additional units out of the site. As I said, we'd love to see somebody come forward with some solutions there to get, maybe punch above its weight for the density that maybe a typical site of this size would yield. So yeah, we're excited to see what everybody comes forth with, and happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Just one question for clarity before I open the floor. And for
Sure.
folks, you can feel free to put your questions in the chat or put up your hand and ask your questions directly into the meeting. Either is fine. So Ben, just clarifying, is retail a requirement of the zone or optional in the zone?
It's so the OCP identifies St. Paul as a retail street. We're strongly encouraging the submissions to have it to be consistent with the land uses in and around the area, as opposed to residential at grade. It is something that we can have a conversation on, but it's, in all likelihood, our preferred approach would be that is retail at grade.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
To meet the standards.
Okay.
So that is consistent with the neighborhood.
Perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to be clear so that anyone that's putting a proposal in, city's preference is retail at grade, even though it might sound optional in some of the wording of the plans. All right, the floor is open. This time is yours. We want you to ask all the questions that you have of myself and Ben so that you can put really good proposals in for the site. Okay, so the first question in the chat, did you say you were thinking of a 6-story building, but I heard 26 stories too? Could you please clarify? Ben, over to you.
Certainly. So the height, so within the OCP, we've identified specific heights within the urban centers. This area is flagged for 26-story in height. That being said, we're very cognizant that a 0.3 acre site is not likely going to yield a 26-story building. So at a base level, where our expectations is 6, we'd love to see higher. If there's innovative solutions, especially with the appetite to reduce parking, that we can get some additional height in there, we're open to it. But it's not a requirement to go 26.
You also mentioned mass timber because, of course, after 6 stories, concrete gets expensive, but mass timber is a potential option.
Yeah, we've had conversations with some builders that have a little more experience in mass timber, and they're seeing from their side of things numbers. Obviously not quite as expensive as concrete. And yeah, I mean, nobody in Kelowna, nobody in BC is really looking at 12 in concrete these days. So that's why, setting the reality is that if we can get 6, we know the site can yield 6, so we'd happy to see it higher. But from a concrete perspective, I don't think it's reality is not really an opportunity on this site, unless somebody's got some other opinion on the matter and they can make it go.
In which case, please put that in your proposal because we'd love to see it. All right, thank you. Floor is open for questions. Okay, second question in the chat. Are both Fortis BC's statutory rights of way remaining on title, or can they be consolidated to one?
For clarity, they are, on the revised title, they'll likely still remain as a separate individual SRWs. Both right-of-ways will have to be protected. So I think they're meant to service additional infrastructure in the area. So I would assume that both are staying on the site. For any application, make that assumption.
Okay, welcome your questions. We're here for you. We want to make sure.
I know I didn't do that good of a job. There must be some questions out there.
You did a good job. No, this is our 4th info session today and our 7th in total. And it takes a while for people to warm up, feel comfortable. But everyone's here because they're interested, I think. So it's a great opportunity to ask questions so that you can flesh out your proposals and make them as fulsome as possible. And if you don't want to use the chat, you can just use the raised hand function. If you can't find that, you can just speak right into the meeting and ask your question. Okay. Oh, great question. From application submission to selection, PSA finalization, how long will the process take? So the PSA will take that will come next. Our aim, and again, it depends on how many. This is the first time we've been through this. It depends on how many proposals we get. Our aim is to have the proposals come in and the selection made. Again, I want to say within a month to 6 weeks at the most. If we get 2 proposals, it's easier to evaluate. If we get 20 proposals, obviously that's going to take a bit more time for the evaluation committee to go through the proposals. So our aim is 4 to 6 weeks from the closing date, which is July 29th. So we'll get the proposals in 4 to 6 weeks. And then the next step, as I outlined earlier, is the signing of that conditional land contribution letter. And that lays out the expectation of all parties to get the project to construction within 12 to 18 months. So the purchase and sale agreement, which is essentially maybe we should clarify this for certainty, but it's the lease agreement that would need to be negotiated between the city and the successful proponent. That would all come in that 1-year period. Obviously, our BC Build's financing would be contingent upon that lease being signed. So those are the steps that would happen in that year period. But submissions close, aim to let the successful proponent know within 6 weeks. We get the conditional land contribution signed by all parties, and then we're really off to the races to get everything in place, including a lease, et cetera, to get this under construction.
Lisa, I have a question for you. Maybe
Yep.
the rest of the team wants to hear is will BC Builds be providing a lease template as part for the overall program that can be used as that narrative?
Great question. Yes, we don't want to waste people's time, energy, and money on legal counsel to negotiate lease agreements when BC Builds is a program that's province-wide, and we're working with many other cities in this same way. So we're in the process right now of finalizing a lease template between ourselves and CMHC, and that can be shared with the city of Kelowna and the successful proponent as a starting point for your work together. I referenced CMHC. It's probably worth pointing out when you're building your pro formas, BC Builds take out financing, which is available for nonprofits and co-ops. Privates need to bring their own. If you're going to own and operate the building and you're a private company, obviously you need to bring your own preferred lender to the table. There is, once we're through this, once we've selected a successful proponent, BC Builds does also have direct access through the program to CMHC through the apartment construction loan program. So that's an option once we've got the successful proponent selected to work and see if this could be a fit for CMHC. The benefit of that is it's available to private and public. The amortization is 50 years rather than BC Builds 35 years, and the interest rates are a little bit lower than ours. Speaking of interest rates, when you're building your pro forma to submit, the interest rates for construction financing and takeout financing are on the Housing Development Opportunities page. So please use those interest rates in your assumptions. If you scroll down the page, 2/3 of the way on the right-hand side, we've got the interest rates. Okay, next question. Can you elaborate on the level of details you are looking for with respect to the site plans, renderings, floor plans, etc.? Why don't I start with this, and then if Ben has anything to add, he can add it in. I just want to be clear what our expectation is, and I'm going to share my screen again and walk back to the property opportunity notice. So at the bottom here on page 11, number 5 lays out what we're expecting. And I think it's worth answering this question in a bit of detail. So first of all, obviously we're expecting a capital and operating budget, and there's a template there that you can use. You don't have to, but it's probably easier for us and for you if you do. What we're also looking for is a development schedule, typical schematic designs that includes drawings and site concept planning, including massing, rendering, renderings, basic floor plans, an indication of how the building's located on the property. Those are all the things that are expected. We're not looking for DP level drawings. That comes next. So I think as long as you hit that general description that's laid out there in the property opportunity notice, that will make a good submission. Of course, you're welcome to do as much as you want to make your proposals look as good as they can. Ben, I don't know if you wanted to add anything in terms of expectation with respect to that preliminary level of detail we're looking for.
No, I mean, I guess in general, less about the detail and more so, I guess, proponents should make sure to put the time and effort, so that they're confident that what is being sold is what is going to be, developed out. Because I mean, I think between the province and ourselves, our expectation is that the submissions, within realm meet that expectation, and we're able to deliver projects that achieve that number of units. So yeah, the more time spent up front to spell out that from your guys' end is time well spent. So I would just encourage everybody to be push the envelope, and let's try to get as many units as we can.
Perfect. So maximizing units is key.
Yep. Yeah, obviously from our side, we have our the zoning bylaws and regulations, and any project is going to have to conform to those. Not going to be preferential, treatments because of what the project is. There'll be, I think, consistent in timing and trying to move these through. City of Kelowna's got a pretty strong track record of moving development through within a timely manner. But the development should obviously meet the form and character as identified within the zoning bylaw. So I'd encourage anybody that's not necessary with Kelowna development to have a look at that. And we've recently redone those zoning bylaws, and more so to adapt to the provincial regulations. So all the information should be able to be found within that.
Perfect. Okay, there's another question in the chat. Ben, you might want to re-mention the incentive that you talked about at the beginning. The question is, are there any incentives City of Kelowna is considering specifically for this site, given the BC Builds partnership?
Specifically for BC Builds, no. We have, as I indicated at the beginning, we have the rental tax exemption, which is a 10-year program that removes from qualified rental zone properties for property tax exemption, and then within that, the province waives the school tax. So I can't exactly remember the percentage, on that it more or less comes down, but it's a big, for 10 years, it's a pretty substantial tax financial incentive. There are conversations around, as I indicated, the City of Kelowna was successful in housing accelerated funding money, and potentially leveraging some of that money to not necessarily equity contribution, but potential grants and whatnot on projects. But I think the conversation in those is they need to be further along than obviously where we're at right now. So it's not something I would bank on being there, but it's something that may come up in the next year, where a project of this nature may fall in line with for some additional grant funding to alleviate some of the costs on the development side. But that's not set in stone. So I would, at this point in time, your incentives are the tax exemption. And then on that, there is the 20% variance in parking reduction with the rental property. But I would likely push this further. I think there's a lot of appetite within council to let development kind of dictate what parking this needs, as opposed to leaning on our zoning requirements.
So yeah, that might be another opportunity for shaving costs, is less parking, more units.
Yeah. As I said, you're only 200 meters from Queensway Transit Exchange, which is our major transit exchange for in and out of the region. So I would encourage developers to look at that and try to shave off as much parking as they think is that still penciled out.
Okay, the next question is, the notice indicates the lease term will be between 60 to 99 years. Has the term been confirmed, and will there be an opportunity to extend the lease term as the term approaches the end of the lease?
So I think from the City of Kelowna's perspective, we're targeting a 60-year lease. So 60-year non-market. With that, obviously, certain conditions around. But as the development ages out, I can't speak for in the future, but my colleagues and I have chatted about this. I think there's appetite in the future what that looks like. There's not going to be written in that there's like an extension, but I think it'll depend on what the future of the community is in 60 years. Is the use of that land at a say it's a 6-story building? Is the use of land in 60 years as a 6-story appropriate for the area, or do we need to completely look at a new scope? So it's too early to tell, I think, from our perspective, what that looks like. But it is targeting 60 years.
And just to build on that, for both BC Housing, BC Builds, and CMHC, 60-year lease is fine to have a mortgageable interest, so that you can hold a mortgage on a 60-year lease basis, so that it is as if ownership, but the municipality retains obviously control of the land. So just wanted to throw that in from a financing perspective. Right. What else can we help with? What else do people need to know to bring forward proposals for this site in Kelowna?
I know we often get questioned or asked the question on DCCs and other pieces like that. At this point in time, I wouldn't anticipate any reduction in DCC costs. That's something that the city needs to look at as a policy and update and on overall, as opposed to one-off projects. So I would just, based on your pro forma, pencil in all the costs from the development side as you would on a standard development.
Yeah, the 10-year tax exemption is really, it's a really great incentive that the city of Kelowna offers. All right.
We're hopeful that we could maybe leverage some additional length out to the province to say, hey, maybe we can change legislation to do 20-year or something, but we haven't really started that conversation yet.
All right. So build in a 10-year tax exemption into your pro forma, is not a 20-year.
Yeah.
Perfect. I think actually all the spreadsheet asks for is 5 years of operating costs. So you can assume but for your own purposes, when you're looking at whether this is a good opportunity or not, obviously the 10 years is the consideration.
100%.
All right. I'm going to ask a couple more times for any more questions. And if there aren't any, we will end the session. But I really want to make sure that everyone's had an opportunity to ask everything that they think is necessary in order to bring forward a proposal here.
Lisa, what happens if somebody has a question later? Do they go through, what's the line, like the communication line? I've had a number of individuals reach out to me, and I've reluctant to respond just to make sure that it's transparent. Everybody gets the same access to the information. So what's the approach? Yeah,
if people have questions outside of this session, you can direct them to info@bcbuildshomes.ca. We will come to you to get the answer to the question. And then again, so that everybody has the same information, we will update the property opportunity notice with that information. Ben, you mentioned you had posted some additional reports recently. Were those linked in the property opportunity notice, or are those things that we need to get put up as part of the property opportunity notice?
That was the information I sent to you, I think, yesterday. So
okay, perfect.
Yeah. So okay, you've got all the updated information that can then be linked however you guys seem fit.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so just for clarity, Ben had mentioned that is already up on the site. It is not already up on the site. We will add the information that Ben has sent to me to the property opportunity notice. And when you go to the site next week, you'll see 2 things. One, you'll see this video listed where it's used to say sign up for the info session. It will now say watch the info session. So if there's anything covered here that you want to go back and refresh your memory on, you can do that on the site. And then where it currently says housing or property opportunity notice, it will say property opportunity notice dash updated, and that will be your indication that new information has been added. And that way everyone has the same information when they're putting their proposals together. Yeah. So that's what happens after today. So I just want to do a double, triple check. Are there any further questions that need to be asked either into the meeting with the raise hand function or in the chat?
So maybe just as one follow-up, just to confirm, so the city of Kelowna is currently moving forward with the rezoning. It is zoned urban center, which is appropriate for all the land uses we've discussed today. We are moving forward with the urban center rental zoning, so that'll be in place in the coming future. And then with that, we've also moved forward with the consolidation of the lands and with the minor lane dedication so that the parcel's all buttoned up.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for doing all that work. We see another question in the chat here. With Kelowna's retail at grade zoning, is there anything housing co-ops should be considering regarding this? This is somewhat uncommon in the sector from my experience.
It's a fair question. I don't know the answer to that outside of, I guess you have to put your creative thinking cap on as far, and see how that works and for your performa. I know adjacent, John Howard Society, BC Housing, they did a project with commercial, the coffee shop at grade as part of their project a number of years ago. Different financial model, different program, but it is, run by a nonprofit. So it might be worth having a conversation with John Howard Society, see how they do it, or other nonprofits to see how they incorporate retail at grade into the model.
Yeah, another opportunity is simply for the co-op to, should they be the successful proponent, to own and operate the housing, and then to just lease out the commercial space on the ground floor to a local business or to whomever. The lease costs would need to cover the carrying costs for that retail space. So that's an option as well. It might be a lot for a co-op to take on running a business in addition to the housing, but that space can just be leased out to on a regular basis to regular businesses. That helps to cover the operating costs of the building. Yep.
Yeah. And as that area changes, it's going to be more and more, opportunities for, higher end tenants.
Another question, just to clarify, there will be no residual value for the developer at the end of the lease. Ben?
So to clarify, are we talking on the residual value on the lands?
Maybe the person could give us, if you don't mind turning on you don't have to turn on your camera, but turn on your microphone and just give us a bit more clarity around the question, if you could. The building question mark. There will be no residual value for the developer at the end of, so at the
end of the day, my assumption is this is on the from the developer, is there any value in the asset at the transfer of the lands back to the city? Or after the 6-year lease, the improvements would then subject to no potential extension or renewal or whatnot, the lands and improvements would transfer to the city.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's, relatively standard. If we get a stellar proposal and they've got some other creative ideas about how, I don't know, something but yeah, the assumption is that the land and the asset would revert to the city at that point. Okay. See, whenever I ask for more questions, there are always more questions. So I'm going to ask one more time, probably a few more times. Any further questions that anyone wants to ask before we wrap up the session here?
Lisa, does the lease speak to the operation and maintenance requirements as far as the developer goes, within that final, say, 10, 15 years of the lease, as far as operation, how the financials work? If there's, say, mechanical needs to be updated or whatnot, as the end of the life cycle, the responsibility on be it the developer or the city or.
Yeah, the entire responsibility for operations and maintenance of the building for the entire 60-year lease period rests with the owner operator of the building.
Yep.
And there are pretty clear expectations laid out in there as to, what that looks like. It's relatively standard, but yeah.
Yep.
All right. Anyone want to ask or share anything else? Okay, I'm going to check for a second official final time. And a third official final time.
Awesome.
All right, I don't see any further questions. So Ali's just noted in the chat that this video and the updated property opportunity notice will be up on the website next week, early next week. If you have any questions after this info session, please send them to info@bcbuildshomes.ca. If they've already been answered in this info session or in any of the materials, we're just going to direct you to the existing materials. Please don't ask us or the city about their zoning bylaw, their development permit guidelines. Please just read those if you're putting proposals in. Same with the BC Builds rental supply framework. Please read that so you understand the expectations of the program, who it's for, and who we're targeting these homes for. Please submit your complete proposals by July the 29th. Same address, info@bcbuildshomes.ca. And we really thank you for your time today, and we look forward to receiving your proposals for this property opportunity.
Yeah, thank you on behalf of the City of Kelowna as well. Looking forward to reviewing the proposals and seeing what comes of it. So,
excellent. All right. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
thanks, Lisa. Bye now.
Bye-bye.